Welcome back to part 3 of our live training session here with our Honda Civic Si. Let's jump into our live training session here so we can get started getting our engine to fire up and run and begin our tuning process. Welcome back to our live training session here with our individual throttle body K24 swapped Civic Si. Now, the last 2 tutorials we built our base calibration file. This tutorial, we're gonna get our engine to fire up and run, and we're gonna start our calibration process off here and getting things sorted out and dialing in our 0-degree low cam fuel and spark timing tables. This is the basis of all the other low cam, variable cam timing, fuel and spark timing tables. So the 0 degrees is where we start from. We need to make sure this is 100%. So we're definitely gonna spend a bit of time here in this tutorial getting things sorted out. Now, we have no idea where our fuel or spark timing is going to be at with our individual throttle bodies because we've built essentially new tables based on throttle position rather than map pressure sensors. So this is going to be essentially starting fresh and getting everything sorted out 100%. Now, heading into this tutorial, I want to talk about a few things before we try to fire up our engine and get it to run. First thing, I went ahead before I started to film and I wanted to sort out where the throttle body stop or the minimum throttle opening needed to be in order to get the idle control in a reasonable fashion. So I wanted to keep the engine as cold as possible, but unfortunately I had to run it a bit in order to figure out where that mechanical throttle stop needed to be in order to get around the desired idle speed of 12 to 1400 RPM. So I adjusted that ahead of time, and unfortunately the engine has warmed up here a little bit and the fueling definitely needs to be adjusted. We're gonna deal with that. It was running really poorly, but I was able to adjust the throttle stop. Now, why is that so important? Well, we've deleted the idle control motor here with our individual throttle bodies. So now the only way to get the engine to run and idle is to have a certain amount of airflow coming into the engine and a certain amount of spark timing in order to make a certain desired level of idle torque. When we're referencing and talking about idle control and idle speed, we're actually talking about how much torque output a particular engine needs to make in order to idle at that particular RPM. So in this case, that might be on this engine, 8 to 10 pound-feet of torque is where the engine needs to produce in terms of torque output to idle at something like 1000 or 1200 RPM. So I went in and I adjusted the throttle stop on these throttle bodies. Now, these throttle bodies I purchased used. They were from a drag car, and that's why I definitely needed to adjust that throttle stop because the torque output of my stock cam higher compression engine is going to be different than the engine that these throttle bodies came from, which was locked VTEC. It had no variable cam control. It was on methanol. It was on a pure drag race engine, and that engine lost a lot of low-end torque to trade off for high-end torque from the lock VTEC and the big cams. On my engine, I have much more low-end torque output out of the engine, so therefore, I'm gonna need a completely different amount of airflow coming into the engine or a completely different amount of throttle plate opening in order to get this engine to idle where I want it to be at. And just as I suspected, the idle of where the adjustment was, the idle, the throttle stop screw on the throttle plates was idling way up. It was turned way up. It was about 4,000 or 5,000 RPM in terms of the idle speed. So it was way high. I had to go in and turn that way down. And what I did on that set screw is I turned it all the way down to the point where the throttle set screw was not touching the stop. And then I turned it up just a little bit so it was making contact. That's our true minimum set point. We don't want to go lower than that. That can cause stress on the throttle linkage assembly and the throttle plates, and that can cause throttle sticking. So I went in, turned it all the way down, bumped it just slightly on that throttle stop, and I locked it into place. So we're gonna have the minimum amount of airflow coming into the engine, and I was able to get the engine to idle right around 1000, 1200 RPM. It wasn't running very well because the fuel and spark timing haven't been dealt with yet. But I pre-adjusted that, and by doing that, we need to go in and do a quick throttle position rescale here before we start doing any tuning because we want it to track accurately between 0 to 100% throttle because the throttle position is our input to our fuel and spark timing and cam control tables. So we can see here, switching over to the alpha end strategy, we're gonna find that TPS is now the input to our tables, and we need that to be accurately calibrated because that's where we reference everything for fuel, spark, variable cam control. So big deal in getting this throttle position sensor calibrated again. So I just wanted to start off the video talking about that because the coolant temp, I would have liked to start off when it was cold, but in this case, it was already up to about 130, 140 degrees by the time I adjusted everything and shut off the engine. It was only running for a brief period of time, but it was enough because of the idle speed being so high that the engine warmed up again. And I didn't want to wait another day to start filming, so that's, again, where we're kind of coming into this tutorial at. So a couple additional things we want to talk about here other than the adjustment that I made into that opening on our throttle plate assemblies is going to be how we're going to be calibrating what we're going to be doing for this specific tutorial. Now, we went into the variable cam control table. If we jump in here, that's going to be our variable cam control table here for low cam. So we're going to be doing just low cam tuning, no VTEC tuning, so low cam is non-VTEC. We've zeroed out our low cam table, and we've done this specifically so that we can calibrate and dial in our fuel and spark timing on our 0 degree. This is the basis for all of the other variable cams, fuel and spark timing tables. So if we recall here, we have our 0 degree table, then we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So depending on what we command in the variable cam control table here, we're gonna find that we have a specific fuel and spark timing amount that we deliver at that variable cam control. We need to establish. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.